When the lion escaped, people screamed and ran for their lives. But one old woman stepped forward instead, and that's when everything stopped. I was there that afternoon, camera in hand, thinking I'd capture some decent shots of the big cats before closing time. The zoo was packed, families finishing their day, kids begging for one more look at the giraffes. The air smelled like popcorn and cotton candy mixed with that unmistakable zoo scent, the one that clings to your clothes long after you leave. Then the sirens started. Not the distant kind you hear from the highway. These were close, sharp, cutting through the afternoon like a knife. People's heads snapped toward the sound. A woman grabbed her daughter's hand so hard the little girl yelped. Someone shouted something I couldn't make out, and then I saw him, a full-grown male lion, moving between the enclosures like he owned the place. His mane caught the sunlight, golden and massive. He wasn't charging, wasn't roaring, just walking, steady and deliberate, his eyes scanning the pathways ahead. That's when the panic hit. Parents yanked their kids toward the exits. A teenager dropped his phone and didn't even stop to pick it up. Zoo staff in khaki uniforms appeared from nowhere, radios crackling, voices overlapping in controlled chaos. Someone yelled to stay calm, which made everyone move faster. The pathways turned into a flood of bodies, all moving in the same direction away, but not everyone ran. Near the flamingo exhibit, maybe 30 feet from where the lion had stopped, stood an old woman. She couldn't have been younger than 70. Grey hair pulled back, a dark cardigan despite the heat, one hand gripping a wooden cane. She wasn't frozen in fear, she wasn't confused. She just stood there, facing the lion, while everyone else scrambled past her. A security guard saw her and started shouting, "Ma'am, you need to move, now." She didn't even glance at him. The lion had stopped too, his massive head turned toward her, ears forward, muscles tense beneath his coat. For a moment the world felt like it had been put on pause. No screaming, no footsteps, just the distant wail of sirens getting closer, and the sound of my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. I should have run. Every instinct told me to, but I couldn't look away. The guards were closing in now, hands on their radios, eyes locked on the lion. One of them had a tranquilizer rifle. Another was gesturing frantically at the woman, mouthing words I couldn't hear from where I stood. But she didn't move, didn't flinch. In a place that had erupted into absolute chaos, she became the quietest, stillest thing there. The lion took a step forward, then another. His tail, which had been high and alert, dropped low. His head dipped slightly, just enough to change his entire silhouette. His breathing slowed. I could see it in the rise and fall of his ribs. This wasn't the body language of a predator stalking prey. This was something else, something I couldn't name. The guard with the rifle raised it to his shoulder. "Ma'am, please, you have to move." She lifted one hand, just slightly, and the guard hesitated. The lion stopped again, maybe 10 feet from her now, close enough that I could see the details. The scars along his shoulder, the amber color of his eyes, the way his whiskers twitched as he breathed. He lowered himself slightly, haunches bending, and for a terrifying second I thought he was about to pounce, but he didn't. He just stared at her, and she stared back. The world around them seemed to shrink. The guards, the sirens, the scattered crowd watching from behind barriers. It all faded into background noise. There was just this old woman and this lion, locked in something that felt too big for me to understand. And then she spoke. I don't know how I heard it. Maybe the wind carried it. Maybe the silence had gotten that deep. But I heard her say one word. Not a command, not a plea, just a name. And the lion stopped moving. The word wasn't Rex or Simba or any name you'd give a zoo animal. It was something softer, personal, the kind of name you'd use for someone you loved. The guards looked at each other, confused. One of them lowered his radio. The rifleman kept his weapon raised, but didn't fire. Everyone was waiting for something to happen, for the lion to charge, for the woman to collapse, for the world to make sense again. Instead, the lion took one more step forward and lowered his entire body to the ground. Not crouching, not stalking. He laid down, front paws stretched out in front of him, his enormous head resting between them. His eyes never left the woman's face. She moved toward him, slow and steady, her cane tapping against the pavement. A guard tried to stop her, reaching out, but she waved him off with surprising authority. "Don't," she said quietly. "He's not going to hurt me." "Ma'am, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She reached him and stopped, just a few feet away. The lion didn't move, didn't growl. His tail swept once across the concrete, and then he let out a long, rumbling exhale that seemed to release all the tension in his body. The woman lowered herself onto a nearby bench, wincing as her knees bent. She set her cane beside her and looked at the lion like she was seeing someone she hadn't seen in years. Which, I would later learn, was exactly what was happening. One of the zoo directors arrived, breathless and frantic, demanding to know what was going on. A veterinarian appeared with a sedation kit. Police cars pulled up near the entrance, lights flashing. But none of it seemed to matter. The lion stayed where he was, and the woman stayed where she was, and slowly, piece by piece, the story came out. Years ago, she'd volunteered at a wildlife rescue center outside the city. It was hard work, unglamorous, exhausting, the kind of thing people do because they can't imagine doing anything else. One night, rangers brought in a lion cub, barely 6 months old. His mother had been killed by poachers. The cub had been caught in a snare, trying to follow her body when they dragged it away. His left hind leg was mangled, infected, dangling at an angle that made people turn away. Most of the staff thought he wouldn't make it through the night, but she stayed with him, fed him with a bottle every few hours, cleaned his wounds, slept on a cot near his enclosure so he wouldn't cry out in the dark. She talked to him while she worked, her voice low and steady, repeating his name over and over until he started to respond to it. It took months, but he survived. The leg healed, but not properly. He'd always have a limp, and that limp meant he could never be released back into the wild. A lion that couldn't run, couldn't hunt, couldn't keep up with a pride. He wouldn't last a week, so the rescue center made arrangements. A zoo with a good reputation, a large enclosure, experienced handlers. It wasn't freedom, but it was life. She visited him for a while after the transfer, but eventually, her own health started to fail. The visits became harder, then they stopped. She thought she'd never see him again, but he didn't forget. The zoo director confirmed it later, after they'd guided the lion back to his enclosure without incident. No tranquilizers, no force. He just followed the woman as she walked slowly toward the holding area, her cane tapping a rhythm he seemed to recognize. The escape, they said, had been a freak accident. A new enclosure, a faulty latch, a storm the night before that had shorted out part of the security system. When the lock failed, the lion didn't head for the perimeter, didn't try to find a way out. He moved toward the main visitor pathways, toward the place where he used to see her, all those years ago. He wasn't running away, he was looking for her. Now, every morning at 9, the old woman returns. The zoo gave her a permanent pass, a bench positioned across from his enclosure, where she can sit without standing too long. And every morning, the lion waits. He paces the north side of his space, the side closest to the entrance, until she appears. Then he drops low, just like he did that day, and watches her settle onto the bench. She brings nothing. No food, no toys, just herself. They stay like that for an hour, sometimes more. Her sitting quietly, him lying in the grass with his eyes half closed. Visitors stop and take pictures, whispering about the bond between them, but neither of them seems to notice. I went back a few weeks later to see it for myself. I watched her arrive, watched him react, watched the way the air seemed to settle when they were near each other. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just real. As I left, I heard a little girl ask her mother why the lion liked the old lady so much. Her mother thought for a moment, then said, maybe because she stayed when no one else did. And I think that's exactly right. Everyone thought the lion escaped that day, but he wasn't running from the zoo. He was running back to the only person who ever stayed.